Mr. Jolly, I know you were born in Ackworth in 1932, and that your mother was born here too.
Yes.
Talk about your mother, maybe, to begin with.
Well, my mother, she was born out in Cherokee County. They had a place on the river out there. And my grandfather had a store out there at a gin and about 300 or 400 acres, a big farm.
Cotton gin?
Yeah, cotton gin, yeah. And she was born and raised out there. Then later on, my grandfather moved back to Ackworth, and he bought the house next to the Christian church up there. And there's where I was born, at the old home place there. But mother, she was working at the tapestry mill down here, Rothschild's. And my dad moved down here, I don't know exactly what year, but it's 28 or 29, and met my mother. And they got married. And he was from Gaffney, South Carolina. And they got married and had me, and he never did go back. So.
What brought him over from Gaffney, South Carolina?
Well, it was during the Depression.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, yeah, sure.
he couldn't get a job up there, and somebody offered him a fixer. He could fix looms. And he was hired to come down here and start working there in the 20s, late 20s.
Okay, so I guess a lot of textiles in South Carolina.
Oh, a lot of them around Gaffney, South Carolina, yes.
Okay. Well, now talk about your mother a little bit.
Well, she was a grand old lady.
Okay.
They had about 9 children. There were 3 boys and 6 girls, 9 of them.
Wow.
And you interviewed Shirley Walker. Her dad was Ed Fowler. That's my uncle. And mother worked there at the tapestry mill all the way up into the 50s, and then she retired in the late 60s up there.
Okay. And you say you grew up next to the Christian church.
No, I didn't grow up there. I was born there.
Oh, sorry.
We were living with my grandpa Fowler, because back then we rented houses, and we lived there with my grandfather. And my mother had trouble giving birth to me, and they had to take her to Marietta to the hospital. And the old hospital was right down there on Church Street, right below the theater.
Right.
And I was born there in the hospital. And Dr. Bailey, I think he was the doctor. And we lived there. And then my mother and them was living with Papa Fowler there at the home place there next to the Christian church.
Yeah.
And we lived in 2 or 3 different places. Dad would rent houses throughout different places, and then finally, in about 1938, he bought a farm out on McKeever Road out there. He bought 8 acres and a house for $500.
Okay.
but he had to go to the bank and borrow the money. Back then, people didn't make much money, and we lived there until he still worked at the tapestry mill and farmed out there. Had some colored folks that was farming for us.
Well, I was going to say, I think it'd probably be hard to make a living on an 8-acre farm.
No, 80 acres.
Oh, 80 acres, okay.
Oh, it was 80 acres.
That was a big one then.
Yeah, it's about 80 acres out there. And
so he had some sharecroppers out there?
Well, we had a colored guy that lived there with us in a 4-room house. He had a room there in the back, and he would farm and do the cotton. And on the weekends, we would pick cotton. He'd hire people to help pick cotton.
You would help too?
Oh yeah, I had to. And so he was working at the tapestry mill, and he was a fixer. And so the superintendent there was drafted into service when the war started in the early 40s, and they promoted Daddy to superintendent of the tapestry mill.
Okay.
And we couldn't get gas or anything in town, so he bought a house down here on Maple Drive behind the crematory.
Okay.
He got 2 acres of land and a house for $1,200.
Okay.
And we lived there until they passed away.
I guess back then he just paid cash for those things, or did
He
go to the bank? And,
well, he had to borrow money because
Yeah.
back then, if you made $40 or $50 a week, you
Right.
was making money.
right.
And but later on, Dad sold the farm out
Well, I
there.
guess back we were talking about the 30s or 40s by this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be 30-year mortgages. I guess.
Yeah, in the 30s. But he went to later on that he sold the farm. What he gave $500 for, he sold it for $1,500. He paid off the house in town
Mhm.
and had money in his pocket, and he thought he made a good deal.
Well, it sounds like a good deal.
Yeah,
We'll talk about growing up in Ackworth. What was it like here then? And
It was
it sounds like you are a pretty typical working class type family. Was that what most people were like? in
oh
Ackworth
yeah.
then?
It was only a few people here in town that you would call rich.
Uh-huh.
There's about 5 families here that they own mills and things,
Mhm.
but they were the wealthy people here in town.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Ackworth was a great place to grow up. You knew everybody. All the kids would play together. We would walk to school together. Didn't have buses. We'd walk.
Mhm.
And
Which school did you go to?
we went to Ackworth.
Okay.
Yeah, see, when I graduated in 1950, so they had Ackworth High School. Didn't have North Cobb then.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So we all played football together, and that's why I love high school so much, because I love football.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. T.C. Cantrell, he kindly boosted me along and helped me out and kept me in school. And like I said before, I was supposed to graduate in May of 1950. And he came to me and talked to me and said, "Joe, you got another year of eligibility." Said, I wish you'd come back and play football next year. We'd have a real good team. So 3 of us came back, Ed Durham, Doyle Minner, and myself. We returned because we had another year of eligibility.
Because this is right at that transition period where you used to graduate at the end of the 11th grade and they were just adding the 12th grade.
Well, we didn't have 12 grades in.
It's still the 11th.
It's still the 11th grade.
Uh-huh.
See, I graduated when I was about 17 years old.
Uh-huh.
But anyhow, we came back and we had a great football team. We lost our first game and our last game. We went 7-2 that year. And the best team that Ackworth had had.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Cantrell, he's the one that started football here. When he became principal, he came down from Cass. He was a teacher at Cass High School in Bartow County, and he played football at Tennessee Tech. And he was a great football player, so I was told when I was up there. Said he was nominated for Little All-American.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at Tennessee Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And he loved football, and so he got me a football scholarship to Tennessee Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, you say you were 7-2 in the football team. Who were some of the schools you played?
Well, we played Campbell at Fairburn. We beat them. We beat Dallas over here at Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
We beat Southwest DeKalb in Atlanta. We beat Ringo, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Who'd you lose to?
huh?
Who beat you?
Model High School in Rome.
Oh,
Model always had a state champion. And so when I was playing, there was only 2 teams in Cobb County that had football.
mm-hmm.
That was Ackworth and Austell. Now, that was in the county. Marietta had a team. They were a city school. So we'd play Austell for the Little Brown Jug, the championship of Cobb County. And we played over at Clarkdale. That was the only lit field in the county. It was a baseball field, and they converted it to a football field so we could play football over at night. And we got beat. And that was a night that Bobby Newberry got hurt. The park down here was named after Newberry.
Mm-hmm.
And he got hurt in that game. And he died in about another year or 2 after that.
Oh, really?
But he was hurt before that, I think, in playing basketball, so I was told.
How was he hurt? Head injury? Or?
Well, they said that they was playing basketball, and they all jumped on a ball, and he fell on the guy's knee and hurt his liver. and then he got re-injured playing football. He was a great football player and a great baseball player. He had been one of the greatest players that ever came out of Ackworth. If he was only like a freshman.
Wow. Talk about running on the track team.
Well, I was pretty fast. We would have a county meet down at Fitzhugh-Lee, Georgia, Fitzhugh-Lee, down below Marietta, and we'd have a county meet. And I ran in it, and I won the 100-yard dash down there. And then our team ran the 440. It was 4 of us, and we won that. So I went to the state playoffs over in Darlington for the state playoff, and a guy from Chickamauga, he beat me. He set a record. I think he'd done it in about 10 flat. I could do it about 10-2 or 10-3. That's a 100-yard dash.
Yeah.
It wasn't,
Yeah. Nobody ran meters back
No,
then.
they didn't. It was a 440, 100-yard dash. That's what they had. And I did broad jumping too.
Did you?
Yes, I could broad jump about 21 foot.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
How big was the? Well, first of all, how many players did you have at Ackworth to go out for football?
We would have sometime 21. Sometimes we didn't have enough to even scrimmage each other.
Wow.
But we played the whole game. You didn't have platoons.
Yeah.
I was a running back and I played safety. But I brought a picture of our team and I got it here to, they could see.
Well, I remember when I was growing up, and they had to play both ways. That University of Tennessee had starting guards that weighed like 202 pounds, that were really extremely light by today's standards.
Well, when I was at Hiwassee, I'd go up on the weekends. I had a friend from Cartersville that had a scholarship, Lamar Leachman, played for Tennessee. And I'd go up there and he'd take me there. I'd spend the night in it was in the Coliseum. The rooms were there where they played football.
Right.
And that was when Doug Atkins, Hank Larcella, Andy Kozar was there, and Lamar.
Watkins Field.
So but Lamar would take me down, and I would eat with those players. And that was I do that on the weekend. And then there's something that they did back then you don't do now. We'd go down to this pool hall and shoot pool and all this stuff, and Lamar would say, Joe, are you hungry? And I said, yeah. He said, well, go get you a hamburger. I said, well, I don't have no money. He said, well, just go up there and tell him you're with me. So I went up there and I said, I'm with Lamar Leachman. So they give me a hamburger and a drink for free. So you don't do that nowadays.
Yeah. What did you think of Cookeville?
Well, Cookeville was just a small little town then. It was just hardly any place. But it was bigger than Ackworth at that time. And I had a friend from Winchester that had a car. And one night we took off and went to the Grand Ole Opera and got over there. And on the way back, it started snowing and sleeting. That was before the interstate was there. We never got back to school.
That's pretty high elevation at Cookeville.
So I went up one weekend to where Alvin York lived. He lived right above Cookeville up there in a little town. We went up there and I met him.
Did you?
Yeah.
World War I hero.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about T.C. Cantrell. What was he like?
Oh, he was strict, but he was fair. You didn't do anything, because if you did something, you would get a whipping. I mean, nowadays, Mr. Cantrell would be in prison probably. He had a board about like that with holes in it, and he would just wear you out with it. But you had to do something pretty bad for him to do that. He'd give you a good talking to. I was on his list, and if something happened around there, he would call.
On his list? You mean as a troublemaker?
Well, he would call me in the office and say, Joe, so and so happened. Says, you know anything about it? I said, no. He said, if you didn't do it, you know who did. So I want you to tell me. And I said, I really don't know, you know. And so he would always call me in first to try to find out what the trouble was.
Was that true that you didn't know?
Well, I knew sometimes, but you know, you couldn't be a pimp.
Well,
It wasn't nothing bad. It was just like riding on the wall. And one time, they had a Coke machine. Oh, excuse me. They had a Coke machine there, and you could kick it, and a Coke could come out.
okay.
So all the boys found out about it, and we was kicking that thing. And before you know it, we emptied the Coke machine. And Mr. Cantrell said, "Now, I know you had something to do with it." Says, "I want you to tell all the guys that got there to donate some money, and you bring it up here to me, and I won't say anything else about it." So we made up $3 or $4, nickels a penny, and gave it to him for the Cokes.
Al Matthews, the football coach.
He was a football coach my senior year. That he came there from Tennessee. He was a good football player at Tennessee Tech also. Mr. Cantrell brought him down there, and Albert Matthews was a good friend, and he helped me. And he's also partly responsible for me getting a scholarship to Tennessee Tech.
Okay. Great. Any of the teachers that you remember?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of them. Miss Fannie B. McClure. She was a great teacher. Mrs. Sprayberry, her husband came on, and he was principal at Ackworth before Mr. T.C. was, and so he got to be the county superintendent. And Miss Sprayberry was my 5th grade teacher, and Mrs. Swanson, Mrs. Boston, Mrs. Ham. There's a bunch of them there. I can't name them all, but they were all. And Mr. Goldlightly, I don't know if you heard about him, but he was a math teacher.
Tell me about him.
Well, Mr. Goldlightly, he was a retired Army officer, and he was strict. I mean, man, he said, "Jolly, you better be quiet there. I'm going to come take this ruler and chop your arm off." If you were talking or something.
Couldn't get away with that
And
nowadays.
he was not married. He lived there in an old hotel up here. There's a hotel right up here where Eaton's and everything are. So he lived there in a hotel. Yeah.
Well, what did you do for entertainment?
Oh, we'd go to the show. We'd go on hay rides. We'd have parties at anybody's house and play spin the bottle and all this stuff, you know. I'd have a party at my house. Buddy Conway would have one at his house. And going to the show and downtown, and we'd meet a lot of times. We'd meet up downtown, and we'd play kick the can, hide and seek around behind the old buildings, and just a little entertainment like that. But now I mentioned to say that I didn't go. I went one year to Georgia Military Academy, right after the war. I wanted to go to a military school, so. Frank Conway and Buddy Conway and myself, we went to Georgia Military Academy, which is Woodward Academy now.
Okay.
We went down there for a year. And something else that people, it's hard to believe. I was 14 years old. I would catch a streetcar from College Park to Georgia Tech and get out, and I'd thumb a ride at 14 years old back to Ackworth. And that's I tell people that, and they said, "Joe, you had 14. I said, I was 14, almost 15 years old. And I had my uniform on, and people would pick you up and bring.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to hitchhike from.
So this would be like 46, I guess, since you were born in 32 that you're talking about,
It
1946.
was 46 and 47. Yeah.
So you had your military institute uniform.
Yeah, I got a picture of it there where I was down there. I just went one year.
So then you'd come up the 4-lane to.
Pardon?
You'd come up the 4-lane.
There wasn't no 4-lane then. You had to come.
46.
No.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
There's no 4-lane. I would hitchhike. They'd bring you up through Smyrna, Marietta, Kennesaw, and come out right through Ackworth. That was the main road right there through Ackworth, 41.
Yeah. Yeah. So Why did you go down to the military?
Well, it was after the war, and it was just a fascination that I wanted to go to a military school.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get away down there, and I played on the junior freshman team down at GMA,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy who recruited me, and this is just some tidbits, was Bill Curry. He came up to the house. I was looking at going at Riverside up in Gainesville, because they would go to Gainesville a half a year and then go down to Hollywood, Florida for the second half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But he came up and talked to me, and he was Mr. Mid-South weightlifting champion. And his son, Bill Curry, was an All-American at Georgia Tech.
Okay, so this is the father of the
Father.
famous Bill Curry.
Yeah, and he was coach. He played for the Baltimore Colts, and then he coached Georgia Tech, and also went over to Alabama and coached over to Alabama. And Bill was about 3 or 4 years old there, running around the campus there when I was down there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you basically wanted to play football, and that's why you went there? Or
Well,
because
no,
it's
it wasn't.
patriotic. after the war?
It was just a thing to do. It was right after the war was over, and
You wanted to get out of the house?
get away. I mean, I don't know. It was just three of us got together and decided we wanted to go.
Wow. Why did you only stay 1 year?
Well, I couldn't play football down there because back then they recruited players. They'd get all these players from all over the United States. They had a good football team. Like these private schools still do that. Bring them in and put them in. So that I wasn't gonna get to play. So I talked to Mr. T.C. Cantrell, and he said, "Joey, come back to Ackworth." So I came back to Ackworth, and I played there all the time.
You called him earlier Mr. T.C.?
Mr. T.C.
Is that what everybody called him?
Yeah, Mr. T.C. Cantrell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his wife was a teacher. She was a very beautiful woman. She taught me also.
Talk a little bit more about what you liked about Ackworth in those days. What made it special to you?
Well, if you had friends at Clark Thread, every year they have a big barbecue down there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have all these races like the sack race, the potato race, and the three-legged race you tie. And it was something going on in Ackworth all the time. Like on Halloween, they'd have a big Halloween carnival at the high school, have a cakewalk, and they had bingo games, and they had basketball. Everybody played basketball. They would come out to the basketball games. They'd all come to the football games. It was just a family deal here, and you knew everybody. You knew everybody in Ackworth, not like it is today. There's people here probably don't know a lot of people that live in Ackworth. It's gotten so big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you were over on McKeever Road, the Eli Whitney School was still in existence.
It was.
Until 47, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was still there.
Did you know the kids from?
Well, a lot of the kids that lived there in the village went to Eli Whitley.
So they're the only ones that went to Eli Whitney. They're the ones that their parents worked in.
Yeah, the mill furnished that school. Now my wife, Joe Sanders, her daddy, he was a superintendent of the mill, and they lived there in the village. And her and her brother, they went to Ackworth. Mrs. Joe, she wanted them to go to Ackworth High School, so she went to Ackworth High School and graduated. And Linda, I knew Linda, gosh, in the church up there, the church was a big thing, the First Baptist. And Joe Sanders and my daddy were real good friends. And they would come up, and Dad had one of the first TVs in the 48 and 49, and he would invite Joe and his family up on Saturday to eat supper and look at TV. And Linda would say, I'm 6.5 years older than my wife.
Okay.
So she would be about 11, and I was about 16 or 17. I was leaving on a date. And I tell everybody back then, I knew her when she was about 10, 11. I gave her a dime, and I told her to call me when she grew up. But that's not. So when I went off to service, and I got drafted, and when I came off to service, then I went down to the beach down there, and she was down there one day, and she done got. I just got to talking to her, and I says, "Reckon your dad let you go out with me?" She said, "I don't know, but I'll ask." So she called me and said he said he would. So we had our first date. She was about 15 or 16.
Oh,
She was a junior in high school.
so you've been in your 20s, but
Yeah, I was 6.5 years older than her. So our first date, to make a big impression, I took her to the Fox Theater. We saw 3 coins in the fountain,
wow.
and that did it. So then I came back. I was on leave then, and I went on. I still had about another year of service. So we wrote for a while, then we quit. She started dating somebody else. Then when I got discharged in 1955, I came back and we reunited and started dating. We got married in 56. She graduated in May of 57. We got married in December of 57. She was 18 years old,
Okay.
and I was.
Waited till she was 18.
Well, we did.
Uh-huh. But you had known her all along, also from the First Baptist Church.
Yeah, from the First
Atwood
Baptist. Joe was her dad was a big worker in the church. He was a deacon. He was a Sunday school teacher. He was one of the finest men that I'd ever met.
Mhm.
That he lived what he preached. Yeah.
I have a few other questions about Ackworth, and then I want to pick up with what you did later on also. But where you were born is just right around the corner from what was the historic African-American neighborhood.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Ackworth. Did you know the people at all that were in the black neighborhood?
Oh, yeah.
Or were you totally separated?
No, we used to play together. There wasn't much dissension. There, a bunch of the little colored boys lived back in the church, and there was a field back down behind the church there. We'd play down there, hide and seek and different things, growing up, and it just wasn't that much dissension back then. Everybody, of course, I get what you'd say. Everybody had their place, and that was it.
You just didn't question it?
No, didn't question it.
Okay. You went to Tennessee Tech for 1 year because Mr. Cantrell got you a scholarship.
Yes, sir.
And then you decided you were a little too small, so where do you go from there?
I went to Hiwassee Junior College
Okay.
in Madisonville, Tennessee,
Okay.
and I played 2 years of football there. And then I was going back to Tennessee Tech, but I got drafted.
Okay.
I got drafted. I got my notice in January of 1953, and so I went to see the dean. He said, "Joe, with your grades, I can keep you out to the end of the semester." So I went. So I got graduated.
Your grades meaning you were in good standing academically?
Oh, I was good, but I didn't have grades enough to keep you out. You had to have like an all A or B.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, back then you
Okay.
did.
So I didn't know that. But if you had really high grades, you could be deferred.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Yeah, you could. So I went in May of 1950, and it's a good thing I got delayed because I took my basic training in Camp Gordon over in Augusta, Georgia. And I took 16 weeks of basic training over there. And then
May was probably a good time to be there.
well, it's hot. Oh, it was hot over
was
there.
it?
Oh,
Already hot.
from May to September, it got so hot over there. 3 people died of heat exhaustion,
Oh, my goodness.
and they would not double time us except crossing roads. And they had a blacktop which we marched on. They restricted that. We had to start marching on the grass. But anyhow, I finished my 16 weeks. And I was sent to Texas on the way to Korea. And when we got out there, 2 weeks after I got out there, the war was over.
Okay.
So I didn't go overseas. I stayed in Texas my whole time.
Well, I was thinking that you were coming in right about the time Eisenhower was president by that time, and
Yeah.
the war was ending.
Yeah, I got out there. I took my basic out there from through September, and then I took 2 weeks of leave, and I would report out to Fort Hood, and then in first of November, September, October, in October, they signed a peace treaty, and so my commander said, "You're lucky. You're gonna stay here in Texas the whole time. You're not going to Korea."
Okay. So you didn't get to see the world.
No, good lucky.
Yeah. Okay, so 55, you're out of the service, and how long did it take before you got the job at Lockheed?
Oh, I got out of the service, and they were hiring veterans. But that's about the only place you could get a job at make any decent money was at Lockheed or General Motors in Shamley. So I went down, put my application in. They hired me the next week, and you know what I started out at?
No.
$1.46 an hour.
Wow.
Now that was a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
I went to Atlanta and bought me a brand new Crown Victoria 55 Ford for $2,200.
Wow.
And I financed it, and I got home that night and I said, "Oh my goodness, I'll never pay for that car." But I was $1.46 an hour. You only made about $40 or $50 a week.
Well, I was going to say, well, it's almost $60, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, time they took
40
Social
hours.
Security and stuff
Yeah,
out of when you,
yeah.
but
What did you major in college?
I imagined education. I was going to be a football coach. That was my desire since I played football. I said, I'm going to be a football coach. So I was phys ed, education.
But you got a job and.
Well, I got back and I hadn't finished college. I still like 2 more years of college. And so I went to night school on the GI Bill down in Marietta. They had a night school down.
University of Georgia.
Yeah, in Marietta, and I'd go down there at night on the GI Bill, and I got so much. But then I was working, and I bought the car, and got engaged, got married.
Yeah. Bills to pay.
Yeah, and that was about the way it is.
Yeah, for sure. What did you do at Lockheed?
Well, I was a structural engineer. I worked on the B-47. I would put the landing gears on, and I did that for a while, and then I would put the ramps, the ramps that would let down, me and another guy put them on. And I worked down there for 4 years, and I got laid off a couple of times, and one time I got laid off, and I got married and went on a honeymoon in '57. When I got back, I was laid off. So I worked, my dad was in the plumbing business, so I worked for him for a while. And so they were down here from McDonnell Aircraft. So I went down, me and Floyd Clark, he was laid off. And so we went to work at McDonnell Aircraft in St. Louis, Missouri. And when I got married, I couldn't afford a house. I had a house trailer. And me and him both had house trailers. And so we pulled those house trailers, a 42-foot house trailer, with a car from Acworth to St. Louis, Missouri, if you can believe that or not.
Wow.
Stayed there about a year. They called me back to Lockheed, and then I came back and got laid off again. And they wanted to know if they wanted to recall. And I said, no, don't recall me. I'm not coming back. 'Cause it's not. So then that's when I moved to Cartersville.
Well, Lockheed used to be pretty notorious, I guess, that until they got a contract, their number of employees would go way down and then go back up again. So.
Well, what laid you off is according to seniority. See, I didn't go to work there in '55. They had people there that had been working there since '51, '52, and of course, the one on the lowest on the totem pole, they were the one that get laid off.
So this will take you up to about 1960.
Yeah.
And then you bought a laundry. Talk about that.
I bought a laundry. I went up there. I went to work for my aunt, driving a truck. Back then they had pickup and deliver service, and so I liked it. And I told her, I said, I'm gonna. It was a laundry in Marietta for sale. I said, I'm gonna buy it. She said, well, I'll sell you this one.
Uh,
So she sold me the laundry, and I bought half interest in it for so many years, and worked there with her. And then I got out. I let her have it back in about 19 and I can't. I was there from
Well,
1970. Yeah.
okay. So now we're up to 1970, and
Well, I was out of the dry clean business, and I was wanting to go in the alarm business.
okay.
So I went down, and I did electrical all during. My dad was an electrician and a plumber. I knew how to do electrical work. So I went down to Atlanta and found out these people who sold these alarms, and I was going to start putting alarms in. So
Yeah.
I put one in my house, and I'd go up and ask people about putting alarms in. They say, Joe, my goodness, I don't even lock my doors. I don't need an alarm. And the first alarm I put in for was for Joe Frank Harris.
Is that right?
He was governor, and he had just got elected to the House of Representatives, and then he wanted an alarm. So I put one in his house, and I put one in his cement plant, and I didn't put any more in for a while. And then I had a chance to go to work with Long John Silver's.
Okay.
So
What were you doing for them?
I was, they call us field engineers. I was over construction for the Southeast.
Oh.
What I would do, they would say, Joe, here's some plans. Go to Spartanburg, South Carolina and get permits.
Mhm.
Or go to Gaffney, South Carolina and get permits. Or go to wherever I had to go get permits
Mhm.
and find out all the restrictions, and I'd
Mhm.
send them back in. Then I'd pick out 3 contractors, and they'd bid it.
Mhm.
And my boss and myself would pick the contractor we want to build the store. So they would build them, and then I would go in and inspect and make sure that they were building them according to the specifications.
Uh-huh.
I did that for 20 years.
Mhm. So the Long John Silver's, they don't have franchises?
Yes, they had franchises.
Oh, so,
They had franchise stores and also company-owned stores.
and you're doing the company?
Company-owned. I would do company stores, and then I'd go in and inspect the franchises when they get them built to make sure they had built them to the same
Mhm.
specification. They looked like Long John Silver's. They
Mhm.
had the right color paint, right color, all this stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did the franchises. I did a 50 and 100% inspection on them.
Okay. So you're eating a lot of fish in those years, I guess.
No, but I built stores all the way from Virginia, south of North Carolina, Tennessee. In fact, in Knoxville there, that was a franchise area in Knoxville there. You probably saw some of the Long John Silver's when you was in college there.
Probably did. Okay, so you did that for 20 years. You're up to 1995. Let me see it.
Well, now in the meantime, my son went in in the meantime, people started calling me and wanted burglar alarms, and I was still with Long John Silver's, and so my son had got out of college and he started putting them in, and we'd put them in on the side,
Mhm.
and then I retired in '95, and
I'm doing my math, you'd have been about 63 at that time, I guess.
yeah,
62 or 63.
when I retired in '95.
Yeah,
Six,
32.
I went to work in '65 with Long John Silver's.
Yeah, okay.
No,
No,
75.
Seven,
Yeah,
75 to 95.
yeah.
Okay. So you're getting to retirement age, but you don't really retire.
No, I couldn't. I retired for about 6 months. I sat around the house and didn't have that. So I went back to work with my son.
What's his name?
Kurt Jolly, named after my father
Okay.
and Linda's father. His name was Joe, and my daddy was named Kirk. So we named him Joseph Kurt Jolly.
Okay.
Yeah, after both of them. So we started putting alarms in, and I retired from them a couple of times, but I went back to work, and we're still doing alarms now. And I go out and sell and do service calls.
Still doing it.
Yeah, still doing it. Well, I could retire. It's not like working for somebody.
Right.
Like today, you come down here, I take the day off.
Uh-huh.
And if we want to go on a trip, I couldn't work for somebody going to work at 8 to 5 every day.
Mm-hmm.
this keeps my mind busy and keeps my body healthy. I don't have a big gut on me.
So where the business is headquartered in Cartersville?
Carswell's Jolly Security Systems.
Mhm. Wow. Well, I'm getting pretty close to the end, I guess, on questions. What haven't we talked about that you'd like to talk about?
Well, you didn't say much about my dad.
Oh, we didn't, that's for sure. Tell me more about him.
Well, my dad, after he bought the house in Ackworth for $1,200, 2 acres, it didn't have a bathroom in it. And there was no plumbers in Ackworth yet. So he bought a book on plumbing and put a bathroom and shower in our house there. And our next door neighbor, which is Mr. Cunningham, he said, "Jolly, I didn't know you could do plumbing." He said, "Well, I'm just learning." He said, "Well, I need a bathroom in my house," so I put it in his house. But he was still working. This was like in 1944, but he was still working at the tapestry mill, and he's doing this on the side. Then when Mr. Bryant came back from the service, he got the superintendent's job back, so Dad was going to have to go back to fix it, so he decided he'd just go out on his own, start doing plumbing. So he started doing plumbing, and he did plumbing till about 1950 something. And he was an alderman, a council member here in Ackworth. After he retired, he worked for Mr. Parker at the hardware, and also he part-time as policeman here in Ackworth.
Really?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a little incident. When I was working with Long John Silver's, I was going up 85 to Charlotte, North Carolina. I was still in Georgia. I was running late. State Patrol pulled me over. Oh, my goodness. He got behind. He says, "Mr. Jolly," says, "Are you from Ackworth, Georgia?" I said, "Yes, sir. That's where I'm from." He said, "Okay, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to give you a warning ticket." And he said, "I'm going to tell you why." He says, "Your dad was a policeman, and he caught me, and he could took me to jail. He gave me a good talking to and didn't tell my daddy, so I'm paying him back. So the next time you come here, you better slow down. I'll give you a ticket." But that was the truth.
That's a great story.
Yeah, Daddy was a fair man. Everybody liked him as a policeman. He wasn't one of these kind that went out looking for trouble. If he had trouble, he would give it to you, and he'd give you a good talking to. Yeah.
Wow. You had a lot of brothers and sisters, especially sisters.
No, I didn't have any brothers and sisters.
Oh, it was it your mother that had?
My mother, there was 9 or 10 in their family.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
the one with the brothers.
Yeah, I was the only child.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the only child.
What about Linda? How many?
Linda had a brother, Archie, and a sister, Pat, and they had one older brother who died pretty much right after birth. Yeah.
You mentioned Kurt. Any other children?
I have a daughter, Jana Jolly. She's a nurse at Kennestone. She's up in heart catheterization. She's a head nurse there, and she's been working there for about 30-some years. Okay. And before that, she worked in the emergency room. She was a helicopter nurse, which would go out and fly out and pick up these people and take them back in. But she's I don't know when she'll retire, but she's been working there for 30 or 35 years.
Wow. What about Linda? Did she work outside the house?
Well, she worked at Lockheed. They had a school down at Massey College, and she went to night school down there and learned how to do IBM cards. She got hired at Lockheed before she got graduated. They had this IBM punch cards, and she got down there and she was lead lady in that thing. She worked down there until we had children, and I moved to Cartersville, and she quit working, and she helped me there with the laundry, and she helped me in the security business. Yeah.
I remember IBM cards very well.
Yeah, she was a key punch, what they called them, I think. But she fact, we were both, when she first went to work there, we were both working there. She was making more money than I was.
Is that right?
Yeah. That was right after 1957. I was still living in Akron, working at Lockheed, yeah.
I had thousands of IBM cards on my dissertation, I remember. And
Yeah, Massey Business College, they did an advertising picture of her. Come to Massey Business College. Linda Jolly got a job before graduation. Had an ad in the paper, and read a paper about that.
wow, wow. Well, I'm always impressed with people that can just bring it, pick up skills like plumbing and what have you by reading a book.
Yeah, my dad, he only had about a fifth grade education because back then there were 10 boys. All of my grandpa Jolly was 6'8", and all the 10 boys, all of them except 3, were over 6 foot tall. My dad and 2 others was shorter. That's where I got my shortness from. But back then they had this farm in Gadsden, South Carolina. He went to about the 4th or 5th grade, and he had to go to work. So everything he learned, he learned on his own.
Wow. How would you compare Ackworth then with the way Ackworth is today?
100% different. It was a little lazy, laid-back town. Everybody knew everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody helped everybody. Like up there, Mr. Jim Ship's house burnt up there on the north end of town, and everybody made up money and helped him build that house back. It was just a community that everybody knew everybody, and everybody just helped everybody. Mm-hmm. And it was just no crime here at all. I mean, you just didn't hear of no crime. Nobody breaking in houses, no nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cartersville, pretty much the same way?
Well, it was that when I moved there in 1960, but now they're building everywhere up there. Uh-huh. They're building townhouses, houses all over the county. It's just moving north. Cartersville's going to be just so big. When I moved to Cartersville, you knew everybody in town. That's the reason I liked it so well. Uh-huh. But now, we'll go to a restaurant, I might see one person I know. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, I guess people can't afford to start in Cobb County nowadays and are moving up that way.
Well, they're building a lot of houses. It's just going to be overpopulated pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Everybody's really mad about the commissioner. He keeps approving these houses. Everybody said they're going to vote against him next time. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, no, not really. I just had a good life, a long life, and still healthy. I'm still thankful that I can still get out and play golf, shoot my age. Mm-hmm. I'm going to play Saturday, I guess.
It gets easier to shoot your age.
Yeah. I'm the oldest one at our country club up there. It's still playing golf. I'm the oldest member still participating in the club. Well, yeah.
Well, you're a young 88 right now.
89.
Oh, you've already turned 89. Okay.
I'll be 90 in December.
Oh, okay. Well, you're a young 88.
Yeah. Well, it's genes. My dad, he was healthy like this in his 80s, and I tried to get him to go to the doctor. He'd go to Dr. Cobble, says I'm in good health. So when he was about 87, he had a stroke. And he lived about a year later and died when he was 88 years old. He would have lived probably up in his 90s if he had gone with the technology they have now to check everything. Sure. That he would have probably lived longer. And my mother, she lived to be about 87. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate you having me.